Hey guys, what's going on? Steven back again, and I'm back with another Walking Dead video. So I'm back today with another In the Mind of a Villain video from the channel In the Mind of a Villain. And the topic for today's video is the Governor, the first real major villain of the show. I did a video before going over Shane, who I don't really consider to be a major villain. A villain, yes, but not really a major villain, because he didn't really, well, from what we saw on the show, he didn't really pose a threat to everybody else in the group. You know, his issues were like 98%, 99% just towards Rick. Maybe 1-2% towards Dale, because Dale kind of, caught on and knew what he was doing. But it was mostly directed towards Rick. You didn't see him, threatening Daryl or Glenn or Andrea or T-Dog or any of those other characters and stuff like that. Where the Governor, hey, I'm going to take this prison. I don't care how many of you I have to kill to take this prison. I'm taking this prison. So that's the first major villain, I think, of the show. But the video going over Shane was very interesting, learning about Shane and what a very interesting and complex character he was. He had all of his different moments and stuff like that, where sometimes he thought violence was the answer, because when you saw Ed hit Carol, he went over, grabbed him, beat the shit out of him and stuff like that. That might have also attributed to I think right before that, I think the scene before was like him and Lori, I believe, having an argument or something like that. So maybe something like that might have also pushed him over the edge, but we still saw him, violence is the answer. You hit Carol, now I'm going to hit you. But we also saw Jim. And when Jim was, having his heat stroke and he was digging those holes and stuff like that, Shane went over and, tried to talk him down. Like, what are you doing? Why are you digging all these holes? What's going on? Why don't you come and sit down and talk to me and, I'll help you dig these holes. And then we saw, Jim swing the shovel and Shane, took him down, but they tied him up. He didn't beat the shit out of him. So you had two different sides to Shane. He wasn't just one, violence is the answer for everything. He had his moments. But yeah, I'm very curious to see about this one here, the Governor, who was a really good villain. Oh wow, my camera definitely went out of focus there. Ooh. Trying to see if I can get, there we go. Yeah, the Governor was a very good villain, I think. I would love to see, I guess, a spin-off. I'd like to see like the rise of Governor. How did he come to be? How did he find Woodbury? How did he build up Woodbury? Was he already in Woodbury and like everybody left, he stepped up? How did he get all those people to join him? Was he with a group before and then they came across Woodbury and built it up? What was he like before when he was building up Woodbury? How did he get people to join him? I'd find that very interesting. Plus, I can't think of his name. David Morrissey was really, really good. So I would definitely like to see him return some way, somehow again, because he just did a really good job. So anyways, yeah, let's get on to the video. In the Mind of a Villain, the Governor. Here we go.
Hey folks, welcome back to the channel. In this entry, we'll be taking a look at the villainous Governor from seasons 3 and 4 of AMC's The Walking Dead. In a zombie-infested world where the lines of morality are blurred, the Governor is an antagonist whose motives and actions leave much to be scrutinized, leaving us to wonder at what point can self-preservation be considered as evil, when probably everyone else would do the same.
Fair
In this
point.
video, we'll
Like
be
with
taking a
Negan.
look at the governor's
If we
survivor
followed him instead of
mentality,
Rick.
the thought processes that lead to his actions, as well as the morality of said actions. But a small disclaimer, given that the iteration that we see on TV and in the comics are largely different,
Yeah,
to keep
I
things
heard that.
precise, this video will focus solely on the character we see on screen.
Okay.
I'm aware that there is much backstory offered in the novels,
Right.
but since they pertain only to the iteration in the comics, I've chosen to set it aside for the sake of this video. Now with that said, let's continue. To start things off, the governor for the most part remains a mystery in terms of his past, and it doesn't help that he's rather secretive about it.
Right.
From what is revealed to us, he was known as Philip Blake in his past life, married to a wife with one daughter, and living a mundane existence as a middle-class citizen, mentioning that he wasn't proud of his job, his house, or his car. Perhaps the point of all this is that the governor was just like the common layperson, living an average life that you wouldn't find anything remarkable about, at least in this iteration. He didn't start out this way, meaning that given the right circumstances, it's possible that the average person could eventually degenerate to his state if they're not careful.
Oh, of course.
Even our
Especially in that
protagonist,
world.
Rick himself, teeters along this line
Oh, yeah.
and constantly faces the same temptations as him.
Mm-hmm.
While in his former life, the governor was a subordinate who despised his boss half his age and deemed to have an IQ even lower, now he is at the top of the pecking order, being chosen by his group of survivors as their leader. From his appearance and his mannerisms, we can easily see why this is so. The governor is tall, pleasant-looking, and with an authoritative voice that would easily inspire and command respect.
Fair
As
point.
the appointed leader of the town of Woodbury, the governor appears to be doing quite all right. When you have a town of 73 residents, it's no small feat to be able
It's
to
not
provide
bad.
some
I didn't know there was
semblance
only
of
73.
normalcy, especially in a world overrun by zombies. Anyone would be immensely grateful to have 4 walls, fresh clothing, and ample food daily. It's even more impressive
In that
that
world,
Woodbury
yeah.
goes beyond this, to the point of hosting celebration parties that would momentarily transport you back to a happier time when the world hasn't gone to crud. Of course, it's absolutely natural to yearn for how the way things were. But in all this, we see a key mindset of the governor's, that he is a man who is in a partial state of denial and still struggling to let go of the past. But given how
Yeah, with his
relatively
daughter.
early they are in the outbreak, this is still somewhat expected. A noteworthy example would be the fact that the citizens of Woodbury remain largely untrained in combat. Given the times that they are in, that is rather unacceptable. And if
Yeah,
we're comparing to Rick's
that's
group,
true, yeah.
even young Coral is relatively advanced in his combat skills.
Right.
The simple answer behind this might be expressed in one word which I just mentioned, normalcy, but in the form of living a leisurely life.
Right, because if
Eat,
you're not
drink,
used to,
and
you
be
know,
merry, a line which the governor himself
weapons and
states
stuff
at
like
one
that, you
point
know.
amidst his constant consumption of alcohol. Beyond this, the pinnacle of the governor's reluctance to let go is seen with his daughter Penny, who has long turned into a walker, yet he is still convinced that she's somewhere in there. But while he holds on to the past, that's not to say that the governor hasn't adapted himself to the current times.
right.
On one end, he's no doubt saved many lives and is now responsible for the welfare of the 73 people in Woodbury. On the other, we can infer that his hands are stained with the blood of far more individuals, perhaps outweighing any good he has done. We
I mean,
get a
I guess he was
glimpse into
doing what
his
he could
mental
do
descent
for
through
his people.
diary. We see that at the start, the governor was still keeping track of the people who died by name right until the point of his daughter Penny.
Oh, wow.
From there, the deaths are no longer recorded by name.
Huh. I'm just kind of curious. Today made me wonder if being something, the governor, or being the man in charge, make the people feel like they actually have someone to look up to. Something they're being taken care of. Something, I doubt that. I believe I'm a good leader. Sometimes I just need to relax. I love talking alone. My something and something to release, like a something smooth and something else. I can't really read it. I was trying to read through it to see what it says, but
You see that at the start, the governor was still keeping track of the
Kinda
people who
interesting.
died by name right until the point of his daughter Penny. From there, the deaths are no longer recorded by name, but now instead by a single stroke of the pen, highlighting a stark desensitization to death. As tragic as that sounds,
well, yeah, but he only
this
had
is somewhat
73 people,
expected,
though.
as there are only so many deaths that one can witness before eventually becoming numb to its exposure.
Right.
But to make things worse, based on his current course of actions, we can have no doubt that many of the deaths listed in his diary are those that have come by his own hand.
Oh, okay.
The governor
Because I was
is
like, there's
not
way
just
more than 73 tally
desensitized
marks.
to violence. He has developed a devious taste for it, choosing to finish off the walkers by a melee weapon under the guise of not wasting a bullet. Given the amount of stress the governor is under, from losing his family to the everyday strain of caring for a town, combined with the anxiety that this could be your last day on Earth, we can easily see that he would need an outlet. No one would object
Fair
to
point.
killing walkers, and many other characters throughout the series use them as a form of release for their pent-up emotions.
Yep, Michonne did.
However, when we consider the governor's
did.
beliefs that it's possible for a person to maintain their consciousness after transformation, the implications of his actions
Rick went
become
crazy
far
after
worse.
Lori died.
Of course, from our perspective, we know that once a person has died or is bitten, then that person is as good as dead and forever gone. But since the governor still believes that a person's consciousness may still be present, then that presents his actions in a different light. By his standard and from his perspective, he is committing possible murder when he kills walkers for reasons other than self-defense. Not that it matters to him, as we see that he is very much open to killing humans as well, which we'll get to in a bit.
Yep.
There is much contrast between the governor's public personality and the darker side that only a select few get to see. At the core, he is a man torn between two opposing directions. On one end, he is holding on to whatever remnant he has of the former way of life, hosting parties and other typical activities of the past.
I guess kind of like
On the
Rick,
other end,
we don't
he
kill the
keeps an
living.
aquarium of walker
and
heads
being
to serve
officer
as
friendly
both a trophy
to
case and to keep himself
being
numb
what
to
Rick
the
became.
violence he feels compelled to partake in. The people of Woodbury also display this dichotomy, and no better example is seen by the fact that by day they appear to live normal lives, while at night they attend the gladiator-style games surrounded by walkers as a form of entertainment.
Oh, yeah, that's
It's
true.
risky and foolish, but then again, there are more dangerous ways to blow off steam in a time like this.
Fair
At
point.
face value, the governor appears to be benevolent, welcoming strangers into his town and providing them with daily necessities. But this kindness is cloaked in deception for two reasons. For the fact that the governor only takes in the weak and the helpless, and once you enter, you cannot leave.
Yeah.
Ironically, the town of Woodbury is more akin to a prison in practice when compared to Rick's new home of an actual prison. So if you're armed or a potential threat, Woodbury is the last place you'd want to visit. This brings us to the crux of the governor's actions and the aspect of him that is morally questionable. The fact that he proactively goes out in search of what he deems to be potential threats and strikes first in the name of self-preservation. Or in short, he does first to others before they can do to him. This is seen
that is
most
a
clearly in his
fair
killing
point.
of the National Guard convoy, who did nothing to provoke him or deserve lethal force.
Right.
Now, in the course of the series, we are presented with many morally gray choices, and almost everyone's hands are dirty. Every kill is a kill, and each kill has the same end result, the loss of life. But morality doesn't exist in a vacuum, as there are nuances behind each motive that we need to consider. Sometimes, to save a life, you have no choice but to take a life, or sometimes there is no other option due to other constraints. As for the governor's actions, however, if we're comparing them on a spectrum with the other survival decisions of the other characters, they are often seen as the most morally questionable among them all.
Such a
Or in
cool
other
pose.
words, leaning the
That
most
just looks so
heavily
badass.
onto the side of evil. As for why this is seen as such, I'll contrast it with some of the other characters' actions to illustrate, followed by exploring the one key question: are the governor's actions unnecessary evil? First of all, we have the pressure of time. There was no rush for the governor to do what he did with the National Guard.
Right.
Clearly, it was premeditated and well thought out. In comparison, an act of killing done in self-defense and in the heat of the moment is a lot more forgivable, such as Coral's killing of the Woodbury teenager while he was in the midst of surrendering.
Yeah,
Hindsight,
guess so.
was it wrong for Coral to kill the teenager?
Yes.
Yes, it probably was. But given the situation, we can't fully blame Coral for it, given that he's still a kid who's new to all this, and the teenager made the
Okay, yeah.
mistake of creeping forward instead of dropping his weapon as instructed. Next, we have the issue of an impending threat. The National Guard were still far off and had no knowledge of Woodbury.
Yep.
The perceived
Okay.
threat was real, but still relatively low, with the word perceived being the emphasis, which I'll get more to later. Whereas, if there was a clear and existing danger, it would be less incriminating to spur into action.
Right,
such
because
as
if you know they were
Carol's
violent
killing
and
of
going to
Karen
attack
and
you,
David at the
it
prison.
makes sense.
Her intentions were noble in protecting the rest of the prison from the infection, and eventually Tyrese was able to forgive her.
Bad
But
execution.
overall, her actions here are still very much open to criticism, for the fact that there was still the first factor of time to discuss this with the rest of the council and see if there was any other less grisly solution.
I guess good idea.
But nevertheless,
bad
there was the
execution?
presence of a real
Maybe,
impending threat as people
Execution,
were already
huh.
dying. And given the uncertainty surrounding the infection, she chose to err on the safe side as a gamble. If the infection did turn out to be as severe as she thought, then it would soften the blow of her actions and she would have been credited for saving the lives of everyone else.
Fair point.
And finally, we come to a third issue, when there is simply no choice due to a lack of resources. Now, this isn't a straight-up kill, but more of an indirect one through abandonment, as we see in the case with Rick when he chooses to turn a deaf ear to the cries of a hitchhiker.
Oh, yeah.
Eventually, the man
Orange
ends up
backpack.
dying on the road. This is also seen when Rick rejects Tyrese and his group from joining theirs and chooses to kick them out to fend for themselves. In these scenarios, you aren't directly responsible for their deaths if it happens, but you are at least somewhat culpable, as leaving them to themselves could very well be their death sentence.
Right.
But at the same time, you are powerless to help them, as you already do not have enough resources for your own community, and bringing in
Fair
more
point.
people would only have the effect of reducing your own chances of survival.
I mean, I get
Not
it. You
to
want to take care of
mention the inherent
your
risk that these new individuals
group
could pose a
first
threat
before
should they try to
outsiders.
take over your resources by force. In this new state of the world, trust is the rarest form of currency, and sometimes you just don't know who to trust. In such cases, the regrettable but necessary thing to do would be to simply turn them away for your own survival. To tie this back to the governor's case, we find that they are viewed the worst among all the other morally gray decisions we've seen so far, for the fact that all three elements are missing: the pressure of time, the perception of a current existing threat, or the constraint of limited resources. But with all that said, while the governor's actions lean the most heavily onto the side of evil, that doesn't mean they aren't still morally ambiguous. And for that, let's take into account the governor's position and the state of the world for a bit.
Okay.
In Woodbury's current state, they appear to have at most 10 to 20 residents who are trained for combat. These precious few residents who are trained aren't really military, but more of self-taught.
Right.
And now you have a sizable group of professionally trained soldiers with a loaded arsenal within the vicinity of your
That's a
town.
big threat.
Given the current living conditions of these soldiers, you can be pretty sure that they would love to move in on your area of residence.
Or maybe even take it
Again, while
over.
there appears to be no immediate threat, With
But you don't
immediate
know.
being the emphasis, there still lies a possible danger at the end. Things could escalate faster than you think.
They could
And it might be
revolt,
too late
rise
if you
up.
prolong your decision making. As Season 4 shows us, in such times as these, people are willing to eradicate another group for the sake of their resources, such as the camp in the forest where its occupants were all murdered by another group. Another trend that seems to recur is that whenever two separate societies cannot integrate successfully, the inevitable result is war. As for the presence of the National Guard, there are a few possible ways to look at this. Yes, you could suggest that if the military found out about his presence, they might have moved in and taken over his position of authority, and that's something he doesn't want to lose.
Fair point.
The fact that the governor makes everyone address him formally by that title perhaps stems from his ego. Then there's also the obvious
They could
allure of
challenge his
their
ego.
much-needed resources with their food and their arsenal, which would strengthen Woodbury as a community.
Oh, yeah.
But more likely, even if it was some other group that's not military, I'm pretty sure the governor would have done exactly the same.
And they
And
probably
this
wouldn't
is
have gone
seen
along
by
with
the
it.
fact that he only takes in people that he deems weak, and more so by his hostile reaction when he discovers Rick and his group are nearby, and views them as a threat after hearing of their conquering of the prison.
Mm-hmm.
So it's not
Yeah,
so
what do you
much
say, a
the
sizable
issue that
force
they're
moved in?
military that the governor killed them, but more so of them being a viable threat. And I don't believe that this is the first time that the governor has done something like this. A person does not become so cold-blooded overnight, but rather in progressive stages.
Like Rick.
It's very likely that the governor has done this to similar camps in his vicinity in the past, whether military or not. So from the governor's perspective, he likely views the military in the same lens as he does with Rick's group. Those
A sizable
soldiers we
force,
see
a
are
major
free
threat,
agents anyway,
potentially.
having abandoned their position. They no longer answer to any government or authority, meaning that eventually they will form their own sub-society. So for the sake of expediency, let's just label anyone
And they had that
outside of
captain there
Woodbury as
too
an
that
outsider,
they probably would have followed
whether
orders
it's the
from.
National Guard or Rick's group. Now let's assume we are in the governor's position. With the presence of these outsiders nearby, you cannot help but be concerned about the safety of your own town. Yes, there is a chance that these outsiders may not have detected your town and would have just moved on past the area.
Mm-hmm.
But what if that doesn't happen, and they do decide to invade like what we see with the camp in Season 4?
Yeah.
You've seen enough examples to know that this is a real possibility.
You're in a lawless world
With
now.
your limited defenses, you would be powerless to stop them, and you would have allowed your town of 73 people to suffer, starve to death, or be killed. But if you do decide to strike first, then the blood of these soldiers is now on your hands.
True.
So the governor is effectively stuck between a rock and a hard place. Damned if he does, and damned if he doesn't.
Yep.
So the question becomes, how much
Exactly. Do you take them out before they become a threat, or do you not? And then what if they do become a threat? Now you might lose everything. Ugh.
risk are you willing to bear? You could spare the lives of these outsiders by not engaging, but then it comes at the risk of your community's safety.
Right.
Now, we surely
'Cause what if they
wouldn't
do
like
leave
it if
and don't
someone
find you?
invaded our town
Cool.
and
And
killed
if they
us
do
for
find you?
our resources. But what if that is now the state of the world, and the best way to defend yourself and your community is to take the advantage of striking first? As Glenn mentions at one point, I'd trade any number of people for one of ours any day.
Oh,
So
yeah.
you can be quite sure that people will go to extreme lengths to keep themselves and their current allies safe.
Mm-hmm.
Like I mentioned earlier, trust is the rarest form of currency in this new world. And when presented with the choice of protecting your circle of friends versus risking their safety, either for more resources or just to keep your hands morally clean, you are more likely to err on the side of preserving their safety. Morgan also appears to have learnt this lesson of self-preservation, being holed up alone in his tower and adopting an approach of shoot first, ask questions later on anyone who crosses into his territory.
Yeah.
As sad as it sounds, in this state of the world, Perhaps there are times when being a hypocrite is the price of staying alive. Of course, we cannot condone the governor's actions.
Gotta do
but
what
at
you
the
gotta
same
do to
time,
stay alive in
we
the
must
world.
acknowledge that there is some twisted logic behind them. Are they evil? Yes. But is it a necessary evil? Perhaps. But that's not to say he was innocent, because in this specific situation, there were actually other ways to handle it without bloodshed. In this case with the National Guard, the governor has custody of their lieutenant.
Oh, Lieutenant, okay.
Hence, it might have been very possible to broker some form of peace between them and integrate the soldiers into their community.
Right, and he could have taken control of the rest of them.
There is some risk here, but then again, nothing ventured, nothing gained. The same applies to the governor's conflict with Rick's group. He had Andrea with him at Woodbury, who vouched for them, and given that she's a mutual acquaintance with Rick's group, there was a good chance at the start that he could have also reached some form of agreement and live in coexistence with them. Unfortunately, his fear and his paranoia got the best of him, and he chose to torture Glenn and Maggie, and thereby ruining any future chance of a peaceful settlement.
Yep.
But back to the governor's methods. Is there risk to this approach as well? Most definitely. You might just piss off the wrong person or the wrong group one day, which happened with Michonne, after the governor tried to kill her to keep Woodbury's location a secret. Naturally, Michonne is angered by this and seeks her own vengeance against the governor. And by this point, Rick's group had intervened to save Glenn and Maggie as well.
Yeah.
As the conflict escalates,
And
the
then
governor's moral
Woodbury
descent continues to spiral
got invaded.
downwards, accelerated by the revelation that his daughter was truly gone forever. This darkens his soul even further, and by this point there is no longer any ambiguity whatsoever over the morality of the governor's actions, such as his sadism in the form of his planned torture for Michonne, as well as his intentions to kill Rick and his group even after his proposed peace treaty.
I'm not taking any more chances.
Eventually, this culminates in his most evil act, the massacre, when he opens fire on the residents of Woodbury out of frustration from losing to Rick at the prison, killing
I had the
very
bigger
same
force and everything
residents
like
he
that.
committed heinous acts to protect. After the collapse of Woodbury, the governor has become a broken man and a shadow of his former self. He appears to have found another life with a new lover and a surrogate daughter. But once again, his survival instincts kick in and draw him back to his former life. It's worth noting that the governor has been humbled by his defeat at Woodbury and realizes the truth of the saying that heavy lies the crown. While in the act of killing Martinez, a leader whom he deems unfit to ensure the group's survival, he is heard yelling about how he doesn't want the position of authority,
but he has
presumably feels no other choice but to take it up to protect his new family.
Yep.
Yes, you could say that the governor could have just taken his surrogate family and left on their own,
right,
or instead try to usurp the position of leadership from Martinez. But there is a chance of failure or death in those two scenarios.
Or it just backfires on him.
Killing Martinez would give him the highest probability of survival for his family. But given his reluctance in committing the act, we see that the governor takes no pleasure in it and is doing it for what he perceives to be a noble cause.
Just like when he went after the prison, I'm doing this for you.
Unfortunately, his selfish and vindictive nature seals his fate at the end, as there was an amicable solution right in front of him, in the form of sharing the prison with Rick's group. Rick practically delivered what he needed on a silver platter, but the governor's need for petty revenge kept him from the obvious solution.
It would have really worked either way.
Perhaps it might be prudent to close with the words of Herschel.
I don't think it would have worked out anyways.
When Rick ponders about the governor's actions.
But granted, that's what Rick said. You know, it won't be easy at first.
Is capable of such things. In Herschel's short and succinct reply, the kind of sick mind that this world creates.
Oh. Okay, that just abruptly ended. I thought there was going to be a little bit more of an ending, but okay. Yeah, that was unexpected. So, there we go. That was actually really interesting, learning all about the governor, and I didn't really think of, you know, hey, we got to take these people out before they could have been potentially take us out. I didn't really, come across that, especially with the guard and everything like that. I thought it was just mostly they got supplies. We want those supplies. We're gonna do anything we can to get those supplies. That's what I always kind of pictured it as. I didn't really consider it, well, these guys could potentially become a threat. Maybe, maybe not. But let's take them out just to be on the safe side. Because, like the video said, maybe they never found them. Well, we waited around, couldn't find our lieutenant, and we left. One outcome, they never find Woodbury, and they just leave. Or, who knows, they find Woodbury. Hey, this is better than staying in a field. Let's take it over. You don't know. There's basically no rule of law, no one to listen to. I mean, yes, they had that lieutenant who, maybe could have broken a deal, maybe could have been, helpful to the governor, or maybe, I don't know, just kind of like playing like a long con. Hey, yeah, thank you for saving me and stuff like that. And then he pulls out a gun and he's like, yeah, now we're in control. You don't know. I mean, what's the saying? A wolf in sheep's clothing. Maybe that's what he was. You just don't know. And oh yeah, my guys are great and stuff like that. And they let him in, and all of a sudden that lieutenant, like I said, pulls out a gun and, hey, thanks for your help. We're taking this place now. Thank you. But yeah, that is that was just very interesting, and just the blurring of the lines, and Rick went down those lines, officer friendly, we don't kill the living, and then how well that changed. So yeah, this was just a really good video. I like these videos of how in depth they really go. And it looks like there's another one here. I'm gonna have to definitely do this one. In the Mind of a Villain, Negan, cult leader. Ooh, that one's gonna be good. The kneeling and stuff like that, and we are all Negan. That should be very interesting. I'm definitely looking forward to that video now. I wonder if he did one in alpha. I don't know. Hopefully he did, because that'd be kind of cool. I'd like to see alpha too. But yeah, I'm definitely looking forward to this one and seeing this one here. Because don't forget, especially with Negan, what if we followed like Negan, or Jeffrey Dean Morgan said, we'd sympathize with Negan and the Saviors if we were following them from the beginning and not Rick's group. So yeah, that's going to be another interesting video. I can't wait to do that one and see what he says about Negan and, I guess, being a cult leader and stuff like that. It's interesting. But anyways, there we go. There is the video. Yeah, let me know, what do you guys think? Do you kind of agree with the governor's motives and stuff like that, and not take chances? Do you take out this group that is close to where you're staying? Do you take them out before they take you out? Or do you just ignore them and hope they don't find you and take you out? What would you do in a situation like that? Would you try to broker a deal and invite them in and hope they don't remove you, take you out, a bunch of wolf in sheep's clothing? You don't know who you're letting in. What if you came across I don't know, the wolves, we'll just say, and they were, all friendly, we need a place to stay and stuff like that, and then all of a sudden, they start carving the W's in their heads and everything like that, and now they're inside your walls, and killing all your people, what would you do? So let me know. But other than that, yeah, I hope you guys enjoyed the video. If you did, hit that thumbs up button. That'd be awesome. Remember, feel free to subscribe to my channel. Follow me on social media. Links in the description box below. And, yeah, if you guys have any other videos you want me to check out and stuff like that, because we still got, like, about a month and a half to go before the Rick spinoff begins. I'd love to check out some new videos. Like I said, I'm looking forward to doing the Negan one. And then after that, I don't know. I don't know what other videos to go over. Who was the governor? How Too Far Gone gave us the perfect end to the prison era. Ooh. Thrifty Typewriter. Another good video. But yeah, I mean, if you guys have any videos you want me to check out, let me know. I'd be glad to do a video on them. So other than that, yeah, just stick around. More videos are on the way. And I will see you guys next time.